Hello and welcome to Elke's On Air Episode 2. I'm Elke Sorensen, and today's episode explores climate justice, boycotting, and hope for a free Palestine. I chat with VIU geography professor Jeff Lewis, VIU Muslim Women's Club president Zena Kishawi, and Sara Kishawi, VIU graduate and the organizer of the Students for Palestine Committee. To end things off, I'll speak with Ahmed Bashbash, a Palestinian software developer responsible for the boycotting app No Thanks. Throughout the episode, I'll be referencing Canadian author and environmentalist Ellen Kelsey and her ideas about hope with concepts from her book, Hope Matters. When we think about climate change and justice, it's important to recognize all the ways justice for the climate is also justice for human rights. Here's Swedish environmental activist Greta Thunberg on how justice for the climate and justice for Palestinians intersect.
People keep asking me what are the links between climate justice and Palestine, and why do you care about Palestine? I do not understand how people cannot see that connection. In what ways are Palestine and climate justice not connected? Why should I not care about Palestine? I am a human being. I have basic values, common sense. Of course, there are the obvious links between climate justice, environmental destruction, and Palestine, which is wars, occupations, environmental degradation, ecocide, huge emissions. They go hand in hand, as Palestinians know very, very well, by destroying all the conditions to maintain and sustain life, by, for example, destroying cropland, and just pure ecocides are one way of ecological warfare to deprive Palestinians of their means of sustaining life. But also, it should be much more simple that if you care about a habitable planet, you should also care about human well-beings. I'm not a climate activist because I want to save trees or frogs. That is also very important. We should avoid a climate breakdown. But I'm a climate activist because I care about human as well as planetary well-being. And even if we are so selfish that the images from Gaza of people looking for body parts of their lost family members through the rubble, if that doesn't break our hearts and inspire us, not inspire, but motivate us to take action, how can we expect a world that is allowing this to happen, to take a few steps back and act to prevent an ecological and climate breakdown? And also, how can we expect that world to stand up for us when we need it?
To get a sense of the climate crisis in Gaza, I checked out the United Nations Environment Programme's report that released in September of 2025, titled The Environmental Impact of the Escalation of Conflict in the Gaza Strip. It is, however, important to note that while this report uses the word conflict, when I'm reading my own writing and thoughts, I'll be using the word genocide. The 6 key findings of the report are as follows. Number 1. The conflict has significantly degraded water infrastructure, leading to severely limited, low-quality water supply to the population. This is contributing to a continuous surge in infectious diseases. Groundwater contamination is likely, with implications for environmental and human health. None of Gaza's wastewater treatment facilities are currently operational. 2. 97.1% of the tree crops in Gaza, 82.4% of annual crops, 95.1% of shrubland, and 85% of grass fallow land has been damaged. Production of food is not possible at scale. Soil has been contaminated by munitions, solid waste, and untreated sewage. And ongoing damage could also be leading to long-term loss of soil that could take decades to recover. Number 3, the conflict has all but eliminated Gazan fishing livelihoods. With destruction of institutional capacity, there are no effective controls of contamination in the food chain from fish supply, leading to consumption of poisonous fish. Marine ecosystems have clearly been contaminated with munitions, sewage, and solid waste. Number 3, destruction is extensive, with an estimated 78% of the total structures destroyed or damaged. According to current estimates, more than 61 million tons of debris will require cleaning, sorting, and recycling or disposal, some of which is contaminated with asbestos and industrial chemicals and wastes. Number 5, the 2 constructed solid waste sites in Gaza have been inaccessible to civilians since October 2023. Temporary sites reduce some of the health risks posed by proliferation of waste dumps, but they still lack sanitary controls and are near the population. And finally, number 6, known challenges include pollution from explosions and resultant fires during bombing campaigns, and emissions from explosions of munitions and resultant fire in bomb structures, including industrial facilities, which will also have likely released toxic chemicals into the air. The repetitive nature of these releases will likely have cumulative impact on the environment, including contaminating soil and water resources, as discussed earlier. You can read the full report at un.org, and I'll link it in the description below. After reading this report, I reached out to VIU geography professor Jeff Lewis for some clarification. First, here's Lewis on what he does at the university and in the community.
So I teach mostly what are called physical geography courses. I teach about the earth and the atmosphere and the climate. And my area of expertise is in climate change, specifically sort of public outreach, communicating about the science and social implications of climate change to the public.
So I wanted to know if Lewis believed it is possible for a land to recover from such devastation. Here's what he had to say.
But I mean, with enough time, I would say anything is sort of reversible, maybe not to the existing state, but to a new normal. The challenge, obviously, in Gaza is that it is still in crisis. There's going to be a tremendous lack of resources for rebuilding. Like, there's a lot of huge questions going forward about how things will improve. Ecological succession, just in general, typically is where you have different plant species come in. So around here, it would be like ferns would come in, or your ground cover. It sort of establishes the soil, and then over time, larger plants come in, and you start getting trees and so on, and it can lead to sort of whatever the equilibrium climax community is in that area. I don't know what that specific climax community is for the Gaza Strip, but often that sort of series of succession takes 50, 60 years or more, especially in a really dry area. And then on top of all that is climate change. And so climate change, how is that going to influence the area over the next 50 or 60 years? There's probably going to be a lot more prolonged drought and water shortages. And so, it's a very good question, whether things can return to sort of a pre-war status with the amount of time that it takes for vegetation to regrow, and with the changing climatic conditions that'll be happening over the next 50, 60 years.
Hearing of such horror from what feels so far away can feel hopeless. It can feel discouraging. Even the climate issues going on in our own backyards here on Vancouver Island are stressful enough. I asked Lewis how we can make an impact near and far.
So whether it is around the war or climate change, certainly your purchase choices make a big difference, right? You basically vote with your wallet, and it does have a big difference, especially if you do it as a collective.
The act of withholding your money or voting with your wallet is called boycotting. As the public is generally viewed by corporations as consumers, we hold a lot of power in what we actually consume, and therefore who we endorse monetarily. Here's a clip of Thunberg on the topic of boycotting for Palestine, posted to the Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions Instagram page.
Fossil fuel companies are not just stealing our future. When we see the children of Gaza killed by Israel's war machine, their homes burned, schools bombed and families destroyed, all fueled and funded by gas corporations like Chevron, what kind of future do we have if we cannot stop this genocide today? because it's all connected. From owning and operating the two largest Israeli-claimed gas fields supplying Israeli genocide and apartheid, to causing the world's worst oil-related environmental disaster, deliberately dumping over 60 billion gallons of oil waste into the Ecuadorian Amazon. Chevron has made it clear they do not care about our planet or people. But we are not powerless. Together, we can hold Chevron accountable by stopping business as usual. So join us by boycotting Chevron, because a livable future means justice now, and there can be no climate justice without Palestinian liberation.
So I originally learned about the impact of boycotting at university. I'm a student at VIU and spent a lot of time on the Nanaimo campus. There, I got to know the VIU Muslim Women's Club from their tabling events. In this next interview, I spoke with sisters Zena and Sara Kishawi about the act of boycotting. Zena is in her last year at VIU for Bachelor of Science and Biology, and she's the president of the VIU Muslim Women's Club. Sara graduated with a sociology degree from VIU and is the president of the Students for Palestine Committee. Sara is well known in the community for her involvement in the encampments on VIU campus in protest of VIU's investments in Israel. I opened my interview with Zena and Sara by asking them about their connection to Palestine and what inspired their activism. Zena answered first, then Sara.
So we were born in Gaza, so we're from Palestine. We came here about maybe 15 years ago. Right?
Yeah, about 15 years ago.
Some time ago.
And our connection is not only through like being Palestinian, our even when we were young, the way we grew up is if we see something wrong or something that you're complicit in, that's when you have to step in, you have to speak up. We are taught that through our religion. We're taught that through our culture. Yeah, that is what really prompted our activism for Palestine to really ramp up in 2023. And as a sociology student, there was a lot of things that we studied about past and current movements and activism within societies. And it felt like almost a call to action while we're studying these types of topics. When you see something happening, it's a guideline of what works and what doesn't and what we should be doing.
I asked Sara to define boycotting.
So boycotting is not, it's not a Palestine only method of protesting. It has been in numerous movements before, including most notably in the South African apartheid movement. And it was one of the things that actually worked. And that's one of the ways of protesting that we know for sure works. And what that means essentially for Palestine is boycotting any services or organizations or companies that have either direct or indirect ties to Israel, meaning that Israel is occupying Palestine and genociding Palestinians. So any financial support to these organizations who then in turn support Israel's genocide and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians should be stopped. And so those are boycotting is a personal choice that every single person can make by basically stopping services from those select companies and organizations and making sure that their money is being used by companies that are ethical and have an actual ethical agenda and in what they use their money for and what they invest in. And so in Palestine, it's in the Palestine movement, it's called the BDS. So that's the Boycott, Divest, and Sanction movement. So that's a subsection of the Palestine movement. And it focuses on those companies and telling the everyday consumer what they shouldn't be supporting in terms of where their money goes.
Zena then added to Sara's definition.
As well as not just the financial support of these institutions for Israel, but as well as there's just vocal support. So whether they're posting on social media or trying to normalize that genocide is okay or that, ethnic cleansing, displacement, apartheid is okay, those are boycott targets as well, because this shouldn't be a normal. And it has been normalized for a very long time, especially the whole Zionist movement.
So any companies that send money or invest in Israel or gather consent for genocide by their support, not necessarily financial.
Zena and Sara then discussed how boycotting has been a part of their lives for a while and how after amping it up in 2023, their shopping habits have changed.
think always growing up, we're always like checking if anything is made in Israel or supporting Israel. We have been boycotting. We have amped up our boycotting efforts since 2023. So there's apps like the No Thanks app, or there's a boycott app, but you just download them and you just scan everything that we are about to buy. And it's like the effort before, it was like, it seemed like a big effort, but honestly, you go to the grocery store, we just search it up, and if it has ties in any way, shape, or form, then we just find an alternative.
At first, there is some difficulty with it. We won't lie. Like, you never realize how many small brands are owned by like the big ones, like Nestle or Unilever. Like all of these ones, they own a lot of smaller brands that we just didn't know. So after 2023, and part of our movement and the boycott movement is educating people and educating ourselves on what is part of these companies and which ones should we, what are the alternatives.
I think boycotting like also became like a lifestyle. Like it just, now we naturally do it, and we found like we're supporting more local now, which in this day and age it's the best to do. So yeah, it's like there's other positive side effects that came with boycotting. Yes.
Yeah. Do I miss the Kit Kat sometimes? Sure. But at the same time, it's like I would never touch one again, because seeing it reminds me literally of children being just torn apart physically by bombs by Israel in Palestine. And so do I not miss it anymore? I miss the flavor, but like that gets overridden really fast by the time the news catches up.
Yeah, I think we've also found way better alternatives. I used to be like the biggest Coca-Cola drinker, and now I'm like into Dorito. I'm like, this is so good, and
it's like the better alternative.
Yeah.
Sara and Zena mentioned No Thanks, the boycotting app, which I'll revisit later while speaking to its creator, Ahmed Bashbash. But in this next clip, Sara points out that boycotting doesn't always need to be about finding a replacement for an item, but considering if you even need the product in your life at all.
In Arabic, we stopped calling it boycott. We call it, I'm not sure what the English translation for the word is, or if there is one, but it's just, I don't need it anymore. It's not that I'm boycotting it to find an alternative. It's I've lost my need for this thing. And so I stopped getting it. A lot of people think, boycotts for every single thing. I have to find an alternative for every single thing. And sometimes it's like, no, you're just not buying it because it's an unethical item to buy. Period. That's it. That's all you need to think about.
In her book, Hope Matters, Ellen Kelsey writes about the power of trends and calls the reader to consider trends outside of superficial things like what clothing is in style, but also trends that inspire positive change. Kelsey says when something is trending, it generates tremendous momentum. Seizing upon that momentum and amplifying it changes things fast. I would add, however, that while trends are effective at raising awareness, it's important that trending actions and ideologies stick. When I asked the Kishawis about how we can stay active in advocating for Palestine beyond boycotting, Zena brought up the danger of boycotting being just a trend.
I feel like with a lot of these things, they're treated as a trend. So something happens big and then everyone talks about it and then kind of dies down and everyone moves on and then something else happens. But like speaking out, boycotting, protesting, doing all that just keeps these topics alive and doesn't let people forget what's going on, because whether we're talking about it or not, we're still complicit. So the way we can remove this complicity is by continuing to do things, talk about it, acts of protest or things like that. So yeah, it just prevents things from being just a trend that, people saw and talked about for a second and ignored after that.
Sara added her thoughts about trends.
Topics of justice being a trend is actually dehumanizing to the group that is going through it. And a big part of the first step in genocide is dehumanizing a group of people, which we have seen happen to the Palestinians. I mean, they're very severely dehumanized. And so if we make the Palestine movement a trend, then that further just dehumanizes Palestinians. It's like, you're only important at this moment because I care about you only at this moment. And so, yeah, part of keeping the activism alive and going and keeping that awareness going is part of fighting that dehumanization of Palestinians.
Now that we know why to boycott, how to boycott, and the danger of boycotting being simply a fad or a trend, I called up Ahmed Bashbash, a software developer and creator of No Thanks. No Thanks is a boycotting app with a unique feature. It allows you to scan barcodes in the store to see if the manufacturer supports Israel, as opposed to searching them up on a list. Bashbash joined the call from Budapest, Hungary. He told me he lost his brother in the Palestinian genocide, and this was the catalyst for the creation of the non-profit app No Thanks. I asked Bashbash why he chose the format he did for No Thanks.
Well, because to be able to involve in the companies, you need to memorize all of the brands and companies and know their products and their sub-brands and all of this. But it is kind of impossible when you get like 1,000 companies involved. So we needed something easier. And because I used to work in a lot of works that need barcode scanning and these things, I worked in a warehouse before. So from there it came to my mind the idea of scanning a barcode, and my phone would tell me immediately if this brand or product is in the boycott or not. And that's when it came the idea of the No Thanks. Because in the beginning there was, for example, another application that you can search the name of the brand and it would tell you if it is in the boycott list or not. But there was none of these applications has the idea of scanning the barcode. Even though that I actually even contact some of these applications, and I told them I would actually code this for you for free. I don't need anything from it. Just take the code, put it on your application or website, and use it. But mostly none of them replied, or if they replied, they would tell me I don't know, about the idea that it is not appealing much for them or something, because the search bar is enough or something. So I did it for my own, and I released it for myself and for my friends who wanted to be included in the boycott. I didn't know that it would go this viral. I didn't know that these much of people would actually know about it.
As Bashbash said, No Thanks went viral because boycotting was made accessible in a way it hadn't been before. When I asked Bashbash how the application gained popularity, he said his friends suggested they make a video about it and post it to TikTok. They did, and it gained traction. However, like Zena and Sara emphasized, trends can be dangerous and actually harm and objectify those they originally set out to uplift. Bashbash spoke about how No Thanks experienced a drop in users when boycotting trends died down.
It is about actually not making it into a trend. Because even No Thanks came to that point it was kind of a trend in one point or other. People are using it because of the news about Gaza and the genocide and these things. And for example, when the peace talk happened, and what they call it peace talk, even though that right now on the ground you cannot see this peace talk or peace agreement, but when this peace agreement happened, there was a noticeable amount of user dropped in the application. Because people, right now they finish this trend, they will go to another trend, they will see what happened in Iran now, or what happening in Venezuela, I don't know, Ukrainian trend that finished before. So they would go after the trends after it. And that's what actually we don't want it to happen or to continue to happen in Gaza, because they know how to play on this. The Zionists know how to play on this. They know that when these news come up and these things, they will know that it is a trend. So now we just need to beat it with another news that it is stronger than it. And they will do their best to do this. So what we need right now is actually to make this movement of the boycott, to make the news about Palestine stick more to the people, with the people. Boycott is supposed to be a new lifestyle. First is healthier, actually. You don't need these companies or brands that actually never thought about the consumer as much as they thinking about how much revenue they wanted to take from. And we need after that to see what is going on, the news of Palestine and the Palestinians, not only in Gaza, even in the West Bank, how Smotrich and other Zionists, for example, announced West Bank that it is part of Israel now. Even though that, for example, a lot of people or I don't like a lot of idiots are talking like, well, what's happening in Gaza now because of the resistance? Okay, then what is going on with the West Bank? There was no resistance there, but somehow you still took it. You still put it as a part of the Israel. And for example, there is another news about now that they can kill the hostages, the Palestinian hostages. They make it as actually legal now, and they will start to do it. So this one actually, like, I didn't see too much people talking about it. When they will gonna to talk about it? When they see people getting killed in prisons, and like, yeah, these are the things that we need actually to do to help the Palestinians.
In January of last year, No Thanks added a Sudan boycott list, and Bashbash recently announced an encrypted messaging platform called Palagram to offer users an alternative to Meta-owned apps that censor pro-Palestine content and infringe users' privacy. I asked Bashbash about the future of No Thanks.
We've been actually working for a very long time about the No Thanks P3, which is like we are like developing a better scanners, making more accurate results, adding a lot of new features. It's been like a slow development because like we are just a small group of volunteers, because No Thanks from the beginning till today is actually a non-profitable application. None of us actually taken any profit out of it. Whatever we get from the subscriptions or the ads that we have in the application goes immediately to the servers and the costs of the application. And what has been what would stay left, we send it to Gaza with the humanitarian aid initiative that we have, which is called Yes Please.
You can download No Thanks in the App Store. I use the app while shopping, and the app ran great and hardly hindered my shopping experience. Plus, the more you use it, the less you have to use it, as you get a sense of what brands are safe. It's a great tool for those hoping to add boycotting to their daily routine. So far on this episode, we've talked about climate justice and boycotting for a free Palestine. But what about hope? How can we stay hopeful in such trying times, and why should we? I asked each of my interviewees these questions. First, let's hear from Jeff Lewis, the VIU geography professor who specializes in lecturing about climate change. In Hope Matters, Kelsey shares her experiences with asking scientists about environmental successes or good news. She said that many of the scientists told her she was the first person to ask this question. Lewis told me about the importance of presenting positive solutions to foster hope and productivity.
We've always tried to focus on the positives and the hope. I've been presenting to the public about climate change for 25 years now. And I started off going into seniors' homes and again talking about the impacts of climate change. And even then, it was really important to again talk about positives, because people were being left with this great sense of guilt that their generation had caused all of these major issues. And that's not healthy for those individuals. And then I've been again teaching at VIU for almost 20 years, and right from the start, you're talking about environmental challenges, not just climate change, but a whole range of issues, and it can be overwhelming. And so you're always trying to focus on the positives and giving people the hope that what they do can make a difference, because it does.
When in the classroom, Lewis described how he leads with good news at the start of the semester and returns to it by the end. Basically, he's bookending the semester with solutions. And in his own personal life, Lewis told me he practices hope by choosing to focus on positives. He said one of the main things that always gives him hope is the fact that people are wonderful and, save for a few bad apples, tend to come together in times of need. And as the effects of climate change become harder to ignore, he is hopeful people will take collective action. To wrap things up with Professor Jeff Lewis, I read him what Ellen Kelsey said in Hope Matters. She says, "I find hope in the millions of people all over the world who gather in solidarity against the financing of human and environmental destruction. I asked Lewis how hope manifests in the spaces he teaches in. He said it comes down to a single question he's asked: what can we do? In Lewis's experience, people are willing to help. Once again, that was Professor Jeff Lewis of the Geography Department at Vancouver Island University. Another idea in Kelsey's writing is the concept of institutional betrayal, which is defined as wrongdoings perpetrated by an institution upon individuals dependent on that institution, including failure to prevent or respond supportively. Both Zena and Sara Kishawi have faced institutional betrayal at Vancouver Island University, specifically surrounding the encampment which ultimately resulted in Sara's court-ordered suspension from VIU. If you're curious to learn more about VIU's response to Palestinian activism on campus, I'll link some articles in the description. I asked Sara and Zena about if they experience hope as Palestinians in Canada in the face of anger, injustice, discrimination, and racism. They told me they see hope as a non-negotiable.
For Palestinians, I think hope is really big. We have our own word for it, and it's called sumud, which means like steadfastness more. But I think Palestinians, we didn't get this far without any hope. Being ethnically cleansed since 1948, that's got to do something to someone's hope. Yet Palestinians, they stay alive, they stay resisting through many ways against occupation, against oppression, and against just things that happen around the world, honestly, not just in Palestine. Like outside of Palestine, you experience a lot of racism, or you experience a lot of, oh, my passport's going to take a little longer at this airport because it's a Palestinian one, or because it just says I'm born in Palestine. And so all these things should, honestly bring down people's hopes. But for us, it's just proof of, our resistance and how far we have gone. And so, yeah, obviously we have hope for a free Palestine. We have hope that our actions and our activism will have even the smallest impact. And to us, even if that impact is just one more person educating themselves about Palestine, then that is enough. At least for me, it's enough. And so, it's keeping that hope alive. It's not that difficult for Palestinians.
I think proof of that hope is that we keep going.
Yeah.
But also, I think there's the privilege that comes with it a little bit, that seeing that Palestinians on the ground in Palestine are still hopeful. Who are we to lose hope in a way? Like, why are we losing hope here when we're living in such a privileged place? We get to speak up, we get to protest, we get to fight against it.
We get to have our home, we not to be bombed on the way to school.
So, we don't have the right to even be hopeless in a way, because they're still hopeful. They're still standing steadfast on the ground, and they are not backing down. So this is kind of like our duty to be hopeful and to keep fighting against it. So like having hopelessness is just kind of a way to, it's a bit of a selfish act, I want to say, because then it's like, oh, there's nothing I can do. It's just hopeless at this point.
And then you're giving green light
to those for who are oppressing to continue oppressing.
I then asked the Kishawis what hope looks like on the ground in their circles, on campus, and in the community.
Sometimes there is you go to the Saturday march and the day before, Israel had bombed a hospital in Lebanon, for example, and there is despair and sadness that comes with that, obviously. But then as soon as you go to the protest and you see that there are people that have the same mindset, the same thoughts, and that also think that what's happening is wrong, part of that despair becomes motivation to do more, to keep going, because everyone here is showing up. You see the community here, and you just feel more at ease. Yesterday, we had an event that was more of a craft event. It was called Tatriz, which Tatriz is a form of Palestinian embroidery that is also an act of resistance, because it's been kept up even throughout the ethnic cleansing and the genocide. And so that event wasn't a direct action. It was more of a community event. It was for people to come together and learn how to do it and to share conversation. And honestly, that type of event, one, gives us more hope, because everyone had that opportunity to have those discussions about what they want to talk about without walking on eggshells. Sometimes you're not sure of what someone's thoughts or politics are. And so you're like trying to guess while you're talking, and you're trying to be like, so what do you think about this? But then in these types of events, it's like, hey, I think this is happening, and this is what the heck, we need to do something about it.
Like-minded people.
Yeah, and with that discussion, these types of discussions actually have a lot of exchange of ideas, which then fosters education. It fosters new ideas, and it fosters just like new action plans. And so all these events, when we show up to them, even if you have like 5 people showing up, that's 5 whole people coming to have those discussions, to stand in support. And to us, that's just it gives us a lot of hope, and gives us a lot of motivation to keep going. Because if they're showing up, why wouldn't I put out a poster next week for them to show up again? You know, they're taking time out of their day. We're taking time out of our day because there's a genocide going on and there's ethnic cleansing, and so we should all be taking time out of our day and week to stand up against it. And so yes, going to these protests gives us a lot of hope and motivation. And it doesn't like, if I go a week without going to a protest or having an action, or I'm like too busy, then I start actually feeling so depressed because I'm just seeing the news and there's no outlet for that. And so sometimes even going to the protest and having the depressing conversation about, oh my god, did you see that just absolute atrocious thing that happened? And people are just talking back and forth about it. It's like, okay, can we do this? Should we do this? Well, do you have a link? That is enough of an outlet to just bring that hope back up again after seeing the most atrocious thing.
Zena then shared about the hope that grows from seeing other people care.
Planning an event and then seeing all these people that are non-Palestinian show up. Or like, I'm driving down the street and I notice in someone's window there's a little Palestinian flag, or on their lawn there's like an anti-genocide little thing, or even like on their backpack I'll see a little like pin. That is just, I get goosebumps because I'm like, this is no longer just our fight. Even like growing up here for the longest time, like we were the only Palestinian family, so it just like seemed like something that we knew, no one else knew. This was like, we would open, when we get home, we could open the news, we could see what's happening, we would call our cousins back home. And then as soon as I stepped out my front door, then it's like a whole new world. No one knows anything. And it was like, that's when, I think when it first came to like Zionism, like especially in Nanaimo, no one, like Palestine wasn't really a thing. Israel first type of thing. So like nowadays, just seeing more people educated, more people willing to learn, more people speaking up, just even like just seeing a pin, honestly, because we give out pins that are on the table, and I'll be sitting in the library and I'll notice a pin on someone's jacket. And that to me is like, we're moving like faster in the right direction. Sure, it seems like slow, especially when like you look at the news and you see like what the atrocities they're committing. But then you see here, it's like the shift of just people compared to like 10 years ago wanting to talk about Palestine, and now, and then seeing that people are okay with speaking up and it's like them not walking on eggshells anymore. I think it's very like motivational. It's like the biggest feeling of hope.
Finally, when I asked software developer Ahmed Bashbash about hope, I phrased the question in a way that emphasized how he takes care of himself day to day in such stressful times. He sort of laughed off the question and said he wasn't sure what I meant. He expressed that he just lives life facing what comes his way because what else can he do? Here's what he said about adaptation, motivation, and the importance of educating yourself and others about injustice.
I lived 3 wars while I still didn't cross 16 years old. So like I lost my house, I lost 2 of my siblings. I lost like some of my relatives too. So like it is something that we need to adopt to it. And like we have 2 options, like it's either like keep crying about it or something, or take it as a motivation to do something with it. And I took the second option. I did, of course, cry. I didn't say that I didn't cry. I cried my eyes out. But like I still took it as a motivation to do something better, to do something for a bigger meaning than me. Our mission right now, and what I wanted to keep talking about, is that we need to keep talking about what is going on in Gaza and what is going on in Palestine. I mentioned about the rule that is going on, that they allowed to kill the prisoners or the hostages in prisons in the Zionist, the Palestinian hostages. And when this started, I don't think any broadcast will talk about it. I don't think any newspaper will talk about it. So we need now to really push this, and we need to talk about it.
and talk about it we will continue to do. That's all for today's episode on climate justice, boycotting, and hope for a free Palestine. Making this episode was challenging. I faced a lot of topics that felt intimidating, but ultimately, it's been so rewarding and fostered so much hope within me. I sort of feel what Zena said earlier about connecting with community in tough times can spark hope and positive feelings to bloom. The fight for justice for Palestinians and justice for the climate isn't easy, but it isn't over either. This has been Elke's On Air, and I'm your host, Elke Sorensen. Thank you again to Jeff Lewis, Zena Kishawi, Sara Kishawi, and Ahmed Bashbash for taking the time to talk to me and for sharing your perspectives. This podcast was written and produced by me for Medi 495, Senior Media Studies Project at VIU, under the supervision of Professor Deborah Pentecost. Thank you, Deborah, for your support and guidance, and to my peers for offering feedback. You can find me on Instagram at ElkeBaySorensen for more, and I'll catch you next month with another episode. Thanks for listening.